I'm Clara Jenkins, 34 years old, navigating the complexities of single parenthood with my spirited 10-year-old son, Leo. It has been 6 years since his father, Mark, left, and through every challenge, our bond has only deepened. My relationship with my parents, Eleanor and Richard, has always been difficult, but nothing prepared me for the Thanksgiving dinner that forever altered our family dynamic. Leo was already struggling with his confidence due to bullying at school. Growing up in the Jenkins household meant appearances were paramount. My parents, Eleanor and Richard Jenkins, meticulously crafted their lives around external perceptions. Our immaculate colonial home in Oakwood was always ready for unexpected visits from my father's business associates or my mother's social circle. My sister, Sarah, and I were expected to be perfect reflections of this carefully curated image. From a young age, I found it hard to meet their expectations. Sarah excelled at everything: piano recitals, debate tournaments, cheerleading. I, however, was a dreamer more interested in writing stories and exploring the creek behind our house than winning competitions. My parents saw my personality as something to fix, not to nurture. My mother's harsh whispers at social gatherings, stand up straight, Clara, and the constant comparison, why can't you be more like your sister, became the soundtrack of my childhood. When I met David in college, he was everything my parents were not: warm, accepting, and genuinely interested in who I was. We married young, against my parents' wishes, and Leo arrived 2 years later. For a while, our life was wonderful. Leo was a bright-eyed, curious baby who grew into a thoughtful, sensitive toddler. But David changed after losing his job at the architectural firm. The pressure of providing for us seemed to crush him. Arguments became more frequent, and his absences grew longer. When Leo was 4, David announced he needed space and moved to a different city for a job opportunity. The divorce was finalized 6 months later, and his visits became increasingly rare until they stopped altogether when Leo turned 7. Leo inherited my sensitive nature and creative spirit. At 10, he was a lanky boy with sandy brown hair that constantly fell into his eyes and a collection of freckles across his nose that multiplied every summer. Unlike many boys his age who love sports, Leo found joy in art and science. He could spend hours constructing elaborate models or designing robots from spare parts. After struggling financially for years, I made the difficult decision to move back to Oakwood. The teaching position at the local elementary school offered stability, and despite my reservations about being near my parents again, I believed some family presence would benefit Leo. My mother's initial welcome, "You will always have a home here," was quickly followed by her true thoughts: "Maybe now we can help you get Leo on the right track. He needs a male influence, Clara. Your poor parenting decisions have affected that boy." The first year back in Oakwood was harder than I expected. Leo struggled to fit in at his new school. His interests in robotics and art made him a target for some of the more traditionally masculine boys in his grade. Coming home with tears in his eyes became a regular occurrence, though he tried to hide them from me. One evening, as I helped him with a science project, he asked, "Mom, why do I not like the things other boys like?" I pulled him close and told him, "Because you are extraordinary. The world needs dreamers and thinkers like you." My sister, Sarah, had followed our parents' life plan perfectly. She married Tom, a successful surgeon, and had 2 children who excelled at everything. Emily, 12, was already being scouted for gymnastics competitions, while Daniel, 14, was the top of his class and quarterback of the junior varsity football team. Sarah never missed an opportunity to highlight her children's achievements or subtly compare them to Leo. During one of our rare coffee meetings, she mentioned, "Daniel's coach says he has real potential for a scholarship." It's so important for boys to have these outlets for their energy. Has Leo found any sports he enjoys yet? The pressure from these interactions, combined with my parents' constant criticism of my parenting, created a storm of anxiety that grew as the annual Thanksgiving gathering approached. Every year, the extended Jenkins family converged on my parents' home for an elaborate dinner that felt more like a performance than a celebration. A week before Thanksgiving, I offered Leo an out. "We do not have to go." He replied with a maturity that broke my heart, "It's okay, Mom. Grandma and Grandpa are just old-fashioned, and I want to see Uncle John. He always brings cool gadgets." What Leo did not say, but I could read in his eyes, was his desperate desire for his grandparents' approval. Despite their coldness, he still yearned for their love, something I understood all too well from my own childhood. The night before Thanksgiving, Leo worked late into the evening perfecting a small robot he had built from a kit Uncle John had given him for his birthday. It could follow simple commands and pick up small objects. The pride in his eyes as he demonstrated it for me was something I wanted to protect at all costs. He asked, his voice small and hopeful, "Do you think Grandpa will like it?" I answered, praying it would be true. He would be crazy not to. Thanksgiving Day arrived with unusual warmth for late November. Leo wore his nicest button-down shirt and even allowed me to tame his perpetually messy hair with a bit of gel. The small robot was carefully packed in a shoebox wrapped in tissue paper, like the treasure it was. As we stood on my parents' doorstep, I adjusted Leo's collar and told him, "You look so handsome." The familiar knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach as I rang the bell. My mother answered, her silver blonde hair perfectly styled and her cream cashmere sweater without a wrinkle. Her eyes quickly assessed us both. She said, her gaze lingering on my simple dress, "Clara, dear, you look comfortable." Then, addressing Leo, and "Leo, my goodness, you have grown taller. Still so thin, though. Does not your mother feed you?" She laughed as if it were a joke, but Leo's smile faltered. The house was filled with the familiar sense of Thanksgiving, roasting turkey, cinnamon, and the distinctive smell of my mother's signature potpourri. Family members were already gathered in the living room, drinks in hand and conversation flowing. Aunt Mary, my mother's sister, greeted us warmly. Unlike my mother, Aunt Mary had laugh lines around her eyes and hugged with genuine affection. She exclaimed, "Leo, you handsome devil. Come tell your favorite aunt what you have been up to." Uncle John, my father's brother and the family eccentric, winked at Leo from across the room. A retired engineer with a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow and mismatched socks, he was Leo's favorite relative. He called out, "The young inventor arrives. I have got something in my car for you later." My sister, Sarah, air-kissed my cheek, her diamond earrings catching the light. She said, echoing our mother's tone, "Clara, you look well rested. The school must be giving you plenty of time off." Her husband, Tom, barely looked up from his phone, offering a distracted handshake. Their children, Emily and Daniel, were showcasing their latest achievements to my father in the corner. Emily performed a gymnastics move in the middle of the living room while Daniel explained something about his football statistics. My father finally acknowledged Leo, looking up from his grandchildren's display. "Leo, how is school?" Leo replied eagerly, "It is good, Grandpa. I am in the science club now, and I brought something to show you later." My father's expression remained impassive. "Science club, huh? Well, I suppose that is something. Daniel here just broke the school record for passing yards." Leo's face fell slightly, but he nodded politely. "That is really cool, Daniel." I placed a protective hand on Leo's shoulder, guiding him toward the appetizer table. "Let us get some food, buddy. I see Grandma put out those little quiches you like." The initial small talk continued as we moved around the room. Every conversation seemed to contain a hidden barb or subtle criticism. My mother questioned my job security at the school. Sarah wondered aloud why I had not put myself back out there dating wise. Uncle John was the only one who showed genuine interest in our lives, asking Leo about his robot projects and science club activities. When we were called to dinner, the seating arrangement made my heart sink. Leo and I were separated. He was placed between Daniel and my father while I was at the opposite end near my mother and Aunt Mary. I caught Leo's eye across the table and gave him an encouraging smile, which he returned weakly. The elaborate spread was typical of my mother's entertaining: a perfectly browned turkey, cranberry sauce made from scratch, at least 6 different sides, and 3 types of pie waiting on the sideboard. It looked like a magazine feature rather than a family meal. Before we began, my father announced, "Standing to carve the turkey, I would like to say how grateful I am that we are all here together. Family is the most important thing." His eyes swept the table, lingering on me, even when some of us make choices that are unconventional. The dinner began with my mother's interrogation of everyone's lives since they last met: Sarah and Tom's recent vacation to the Maldives, Daniel's football prospects, Emily's gymnastics competition. When the conversation turned to Leo and me, the questions became sharper. My mother asked, her voice dripping with concern that was not really concern, "How are you managing financially, Clara? Teaching does not pay much." And with Mark being, well, Mark. I replied, cutting my turkey with more force than necessary, "We are doing just fine. The school has great benefits, and we have made our apartment really cozy." My mother repeated, as if the word itself was distasteful, "Apartment? Well, at least it is temporary, I hope." Leo tried several times to join the conversation, but was repeatedly talked over or ignored. I watched him shrink a little more with each attempt, pushing his food around his plate rather than eating it. When Daniel began boasting about intimidating a smaller kid on an opposing football team, Leo's expression grew increasingly uncomfortable. Uncle John interjected surprisingly, "That is enough, Daniel. There is no honor in using your size to scare others." My father chuckled, "John, boys will be boys. Daniel is just showing some healthy competitive spirit." Leo said quietly, and the table went momentarily silent at his unexpected comment, "I do not think it is healthy." My father said with a dismissive wave, "Well, when you have never played a real sport, I suppose you would not understand the dynamics." The tension at the table was palpable. I caught Leo's eye again and mouthed, "Are you okay?" He nodded, but I could see the hurt behind his brave face. Uncle John, clearly trying to change the subject, said, "Leo, tell everyone about that robot you have been working on." Leo's eyes lit up at Uncle John's invitation. He straightened in his chair, a glimmer of excitement replacing the dejection that had settled on his features throughout dinner. He began, his voice gaining confidence, "I finished building a programmable robot last week. It can follow simple commands and pick up small objects. I programmed it myself using the coding book Uncle John gave me." Uncle John encouraged, "You brought it, right? Maybe you could show everyone after dinner." Lucas said, reaching down for the shoebox beneath his chair, "Actually, I have it here." With careful hands, he removed the tissue paper and placed his creation on the table beside his plate. The robot was about the size of a small toaster, constructed from a kit, but with several creative modifications Leo had added himself. The LED lights blinked in patterns as he switched it on. He explained, pointing to the front of the robot, "It has got sensors here and here. And I modified the gripping mechanism so it can pick up things as small as a paperclip or as big as an apple." For a moment, the table was attentive. Even Daniel looked somewhat interested. Leo's face glowed with pride as he demonstrated how the robot could navigate around obstacles on the table. Then my father snorted. He said, his voice thick with mockery, "Is that what they are teaching in science club these days?" He picked up a salt shaker and mimicked the robot's movements in an exaggerated way, saying in a high-pitched voice meant to imitate Leo, "Beep boop. I am a robot." My mother's laugh came first, a tittering sound that she partially covered with her napkin. Then Sarah joined in, followed by her husband, Tom, and finally Daniel, who laughed the loudest. My mother said between chuckles, "Honestly, Clara, could you not encourage him to do something more practical? He is so sensitive, just like you were. It does not serve boys well in the real world." Leo's hands trembled as he reached for his robot. His face had gone from animated to frozen, a deep red flush creeping up his neck and into his cheeks. My father declared with a dismissive wave, "He is just a kid. He will get over it. Boys need to toughen up if they are going to make it in this world." I said sharply, finding my voice, "That is enough. Leo has every right to pursue his interests without being mocked for them." Sarah interjected, "Oh, Clara, do not be so dramatic. Dad is just having a little fun. Leo needs to learn to take a joke." Leo's fork clattered against his plate as it slipped from his fingers. His eyes, swimming with unshed tears, met mine across the table. The look of betrayal and hurt was so acute it felt like a physical pain in my chest. I continued, my voice rising. "Leo worked really hard on that robot. He has shown incredible dedication and creativity, which are qualities that should be encouraged, not ridiculed." My father sighed dramatically. "Here we go again. This is why the boy is so soft. Clara, you cuddle him too much." Tom, Sarah's husband, who had barely spoken all evening, decided this was his moment to contribute. Boys these days are not being raised right. They need discipline and traditional male influences. No offense, Clara, but single mothers just cannot provide that. The table fell silent. Leo's hands were now flat on the table, his shoulders rigid. Something shifted in his expression. The hurt was still there, but something else had joined it, determination. Slowly, deliberately, Leo stood up. At 10 years old, he was not very tall, but in that moment, he seemed to grow inches before my eyes. He said, his voice clear and steady despite the slight quiver of his chin, "I will never forget this. Not what you said, not how you laughed, and not how it made me feel." The table went completely silent. My father's mocking smile froze. My mother's eyes widened. Even Daniel stopped snickering. My father started, his tone suddenly conciliatory. But Leo had already carefully placed his robot back in its box and was walking out of the dining room. I stood up immediately, my napkin falling to the floor. I said, looking directly at my parents, "How dare you? How dare you humiliate a child, your own grandson, for having passions and interests that do not fit your narrow view of what a boy should be?" My mother said, her voice tight, "Clara, you are overreacting. It was just a bit of family teasing. Every child needs to learn to handle criticism." Uncle John spoke up unexpectedly. "That was not criticism. That was cruelty, Eleanor and Richard. I expected better from you." My father warned, "Stay out of this, John." Uncle John replied calmly, "No, I do not think I will. I have stayed out of it for too many years, watching how you treat Clara and now Leo. It stops today." I felt a surge of gratitude toward Uncle John, but my focus remained on Leo. I said, "I am going to check on my son. And then we are leaving." My mother hissed, "Do not be ridiculous. It is Thanksgiving. You cannot just leave in the middle of dinner because of a little hurt feelings." I replied, turning toward the door, "Watch me." My father's authoritative voice boomed, "Clara Marie Jenkins. If you walk out that door with that boy right now, do not bother coming back." I turned slowly to face him. "Is that supposed to be a threat, Dad? Because from where I am standing, not coming back sounds like the healthiest choice I could make for Leo and myself." I found Leo sitting on the steps of the front porch, hugging his robot box to his chest. Without a word, I sat beside him and put my arm around his shoulders. We stayed like that for several minutes, the sounds of arguing voices floating through the dining room windows. I finally said, "I am sorry, Leo. I am so sorry they treated you that way." He replied, his voice small but steady, "It is not your fault, Mom. Can we go home now?" I said, standing and offering him my hand, "Absolutely. We never have to come back here if you do not want to." As we walked to the car, I heard the front door open behind us. I turned, half expecting to see my parents, but it was Uncle John carrying our coats and a small bag. He said, handing me the coats, "You forgot these. And I packed some pie for later. That boy deserves something sweet after what happened in there." He knelt down to Leo's level. "I am proud of you, kiddo. Standing up for yourself like that takes real courage. More courage than anyone else showed at that table today." Leo managed a small smile. "Thanks, Uncle John. Uncle John told me quietly, I will call you tomorrow. This has been a long time coming, Clara. You are doing the right thing. As we drove away from my parents' house, the silence in the car was heavy with unshed tears and unspoken words. Leo stared out the window, clutching his robot box like a lifeline. The drive home felt endless. Streetlights cast intermittent shadows across Leo's face as he stared out the passenger window. Neither of us spoke. The weight of what had happened seemed too heavy for words. I kept glancing at him, searching for signs of how deeply the wound had cut, but his expression remained carefully neutral, a mask number 10-year-old should have to wear. When we finally reached our apartment building, Leo unbuckled his seat belt, but did not move to get out of the car. His voice was barely audible. Mom, are they right about me? The question shattered my heart. I turned off the engine and shifted to face him fully. I said gently, Leo, look at me. He turned, his eyes swimming with tears he had been holding back all evening. Your grandparents are wrong. So wrong. There is nothing, absolutely nothing, wrong with who you are. You are creative, intelligent, and kind. Those are strengths, not weaknesses. His bottom lip trembled. But Grandpa said boys need to be tough. Daniel does not get bullied at school. Maybe if I was more like him. I asked, do you really want to be like Daniel? Someone who thinks it is okay to intimidate smaller kids? Is that the kind of person you admire? Leo considered this, then slowly shook his head. The world needs all kinds of people, Leo. It needs artists and scientists and dreamers just as much as it needs athletes. Maybe even more. We sat in silence for another moment before heading upstairs to our apartment. Once inside, Leo placed his robot carefully on the coffee table, then suddenly collapsed onto the couch, the dam finally breaking. His sobs were gut-wrenching, deep, body-shaking cries that seemed to come from somewhere primal. I held him against my chest, rocking slightly as I had when he was smaller. I whispered, let it out. It is okay to be hurt. It is okay to cry. When his sobs finally subsided to hiccups and shaky breaths, he pulled away slightly. He confessed, wiping his nose with his sleeve, it was not just tonight, Mom. They always do that when you go to help Grandma in the kitchen or when you are talking to Aunt Mary. Grandpa and Daniel make fun of me. They have been doing it every time we visit. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. All those times I had left Leo alone with my father, thinking they were bonding, he had been enduring ridicule and humiliation. I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady, why did you not tell me? He said with a shrug that broke my heart all over again, I did not want you to be upset. And I thought maybe if I just tried harder, they would like me eventually. I pulled him close again. This is not your problem to fix, Leo. You should not have to change who you are to earn love from your family. That is not how love is supposed to work. We stayed up late talking more openly than we ever had before. Leo shared other painful memories, comments my father had made about his art, the way my mother constantly compared him to Daniel, how Sarah's children excluded him from their games. Each revelation fueled a growing anger inside me, but also a resolve to protect my son from further harm. Around midnight, my phone chimed with a text from Sarah. Way to overreact and ruin Thanksgiving. Mom is upset and Dad is furious. You always make everything about you. Leo needs to learn to take a joke and not be so sensitive. Tom says that is why he will struggle in life. I turned off my phone without responding. That night, sleep eluded me. I replayed every visit to my parents' house, searching for signs I had missed. Moments when Leo might have been suffering while I remained oblivious. The weight of my failure to protect him pressed on my chest like a stone. Morning came after a restless night. I found Leo already awake, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, making adjustments to his robot. He looked up when I entered, his expression serious beyond his years. He said simply, I do not want to go back there, Mom. We do not have to, sweetheart. He asked, are you mad at them? I considered my answer carefully. I am disappointed in them. And I am angry about how they treated you, but mostly I am sad that they cannot see how amazing you are just as you are. I was pouring coffee when the doorbell rang. Given the early hour, I knew exactly who it would be. My father rarely allowed conflicts to simmer. He preferred to impose his resolution immediately and decisively. Sure enough, when I opened the door, Richard Jenkins stood in the hallway, his posture rigid and his expression stern. He was dressed impeccably as always, not a silver hair out of place. He said by way of greeting, "Clara, this has gone on long enough. Your mother is upset. Dinner was ruined. And I expect you to bring Leo back today for leftover dinner to smooth things over." No apology, no acknowledgement of what had happened. Just the expectation that we would fall in line as we always had before. I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "That is not going to happen, Dad." Not without a genuine apology to Leo and a commitment to treat him with respect going forward. My father's expression darkened. "This is ridiculous. We were just having a little family fun. The boy needs to toughen up, and you're not doing him any favors by coddling him." I countered, "It was not fun for Leo. It was humiliating. And he deserves better from his grandparents." My father insisted, "Well, he will have to get over it. That is what family does. We move past these things." I said firmly, "Not this time. Not without real change." What happened next caught both my father and me by surprise. The sound of footsteps behind me made me turn, and there stood Leo in his pajamas, clutching his robot. He said quietly, "Hi, Grandpa." My father's expression softened marginally. "Leo, good morning. I was just telling your mother that we expect you both back for dinner today. Your grandmother made your favorite pumpkin pie." I started to step in front of Leo protectively, but he moved beside me instead, his shoulder touching my hip. Leo said, his voice small but clear, "I do not want to come back. Not after what happened yesterday." My father's eyebrows shot up, clearly not expecting direct confrontation from his 10-year-old grandson. "Now, Leo, it was just a bit of teasing. Family teases each other. It is how we show love." Leo shook his head slowly. "That is not love, Grandpa." It hurt me. It always hurts me when you and Daniel make fun of the things I like. My father insisted, his tone becoming patronizing. "We are just trying to help you grow up to be a strong man. The world is not kind to sensitive boys." Leo replied, looking directly at his grandfather, "Maybe the world should be kinder. My science teacher says my robot design was one of the most creative she has seen. My art teacher put my drawing in the school showcase. The things you laugh at are the things other people think are good about me." My father's mouth opened and closed, momentarily at a loss for words. I placed my hand on Leo's shoulder, overwhelmed with pride at his articulate defense of himself. My father finally said, switching tactics, "Leo, I understand you are upset. But family is family. We stick together no matter what. Your grandmother and I have certain expectations, and one of them is that we do not hold grudges." Leo said thoughtfully, "I am not holding a grudge. I just do not want to be around people who make me feel bad about myself. Mom says I should not have to earn love by changing who I am." My father's face reddened. "Clara, this is your influence. You are turning him against us with these modern parenting notions." I interjected, "No, Dad. I am teaching him self-respect and boundaries, something I wish I had learned much earlier in life." My father huffed, "This is absurd. Richard Jenkins's family does not do boundaries. We are loyal to each other above all else." Leo asked, genuine curiosity in his voice, even when that loyalty hurts someone. My father stared at Leo as if seeing him for the first time. "You do not understand adult matters, boy. This conversation is between your mother and me." Leo persisted, "But it is about me. Should not I get a say in how people treat me?" The simple logic of a child seemed to stump my father momentarily. Then his expression hardened again. "Clara, this has gone far enough. Either you bring Leo to dinner today and we put this nonsense behind us, or you will both regret it. Family loyalty is not optional." I felt a calm certainty settle over me. "You are right about one thing, Dad. Family loyalty is not optional. I am being loyal to my family right now, to Leo and myself. We deserve respect, not ridicule. We deserve love without conditions. My father demanded, "This is your final answer?" I confirmed, "It is. Until you are ready to truly see and accept Leo for who he is, not who you want him to be, we will not be coming back." He said coldly, "Then you have made your choice. Do not expect your mother and me to bail you out next time you are struggling financially or need help with the boy. You are on your own." I replied softly, "We always have been." Leo reached for my hand as I gently closed the door on my father's thunderous expression. The finality of the soft click seemed to echo in our small apartment. Leo asked, concern evident in his eyes, "Are you okay, Mom?" I knelt down to his level. "I am more than okay, Leo. I am proud. Proud of you for standing up for yourself and proud of us for choosing what is healthy over what is familiar." He asked, "What happens now?" I said, smiling despite the heaviness in my heart, "Now we make our own Thanksgiving traditions. Just the two of us." Later that morning, as I mixed pancake batter while Leo set the table, my phone rang. It was Uncle John. He said without preamble, "I heard what happened with Richard this morning. He is on the warpath." I asked, "How did you know?" He replied, "I stopped by your parents' house to give them a piece of my mind about last night. Richard was just getting back and ranting about ungrateful children and disrespectful grandsons." Uncle John's chuckle held no humor. "I wanted to check that you and Leo are okay," I said, watching Leo carefully arrange 2 place settings at our small kitchen table. "We are managing." It was harder than I expected standing up to him like that. Uncle John sighed, 68 years I have known my brother. And in all that time, I have never seen him admit he was wrong about anything. "But Clara, that does not mean you are not right. What you did today took courage." I said, "Leo was the brave one." Uncle John replied, "That is because he has you showing him how it is done. Listen, I am having my own little rebellion against the Jenkins family regime. I am going to order Chinese food and watch football in my underwear instead of attending the leftovers dinner. How about I bring some food over to you two later?" For the first time since the disastrous dinner, I felt a genuine smile spread across my face. We would like that very much. Throughout the day, messages continued to arrive. A series of texts from my mother alternating between guilt trips and veiled threats. A surprisingly thoughtful email from Aunt Mary acknowledging how poorly Leo had been treated and apologizing for not speaking up. A terse voicemail from Sarah reiterating that I was overreacting. I responded to none of them, focusing instead on creating a new kind of day with Leo. We built a blanket fort in the living room, baked cookies, and watched his favorite science fiction movies. When Uncle John arrived with enough Chinese food to feed a small army, we welcomed him into our makeshift celebration. Uncle John toasted, raising his glass of soda, to new traditions. Leo added, clinking his glass against his great uncle's, to being ourselves. As I watched them laugh together, something tight and painful that had lived in my chest for as long as I could remember began to loosen. For the first time, I could see clearly that family was not defined by blood or obligation, but by respect, acceptance, and genuine love. And by that definition, our little gathering of 3 was more of a family than anything I had experienced in my parents' grand house. The week following Thanksgiving unfolded in unexpected ways. My phone continued to buzz with messages from family members, but I maintained my distance, needing time to process what had happened and determine the best path forward for Leo and me. On Monday afternoon, I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Evelyn Carter, a family therapist recommended by the school counselor. I sat in her warmly lit office surrounded by plants and calming artwork and poured out the entire story. Dr. Carter explained after listening intently, what you are describing is a pattern of emotional dismissal that likely goes back generations in your family. Breaking these patterns is not easy, but it is absolutely possible, especially when the motivation is protecting your child. I admitted, I just do not know if I am doing the right thing. Cutting them off completely feels so final. She clarified, setting boundaries is not the same as cutting people off. Boundaries communicate what you will and will not accept in how you are treated. The ball is then in their court to respect those boundaries or not. Over the next hour, Dr. Carter helped me craft a clear set of boundaries for my parents and sister. We scheduled another session for the following week with the possibility of including Leo in future meetings if he felt comfortable. That evening, Leo's science teacher, Ms. Peterson, called with news that surprised us both. She said, "Leo has been different at school this week. More confident, more willing to share his ideas in class. Whatever you are doing at home, it is working." I hung up, feeling a mixture of pride and sadness, proud of Leo's resilience, but sad that it had taken such a painful experience to catalyze his growth. A few days later, an unexpected letter arrived in the mail. It was from Aunt Mary, handwritten on her personal stationery. "Dear Clara and Leo," it began. "I have been reflecting deeply on what happened at Thanksgiving, and I feel compelled to offer my sincere apology. I witnessed the humiliation of a child and remained silent. There is no excuse for that. The Jenkins family has long perpetuated patterns of criticism disguised as character building, and I have been complicit in it. Your courage in standing up to Richard has forced me to examine my own role in maintaining these toxic dynamics. Please know that I support your decision to establish boundaries, and I am working on some of my own. With love and regret, Aunt Mary." I read the letter to Leo over breakfast. I asked him, "What do you think about that?" He considered for a moment, stirring his cereal thoughtfully. "I think Aunt Mary might be the bravest grown-up in our family besides you, Mom. It is hard to say you are wrong." His insight, so simple yet profound, reminded me again of the remarkable person he was becoming. The following weekend, I made a difficult decision. After consulting with Dr. Carter, I drafted a clear, firm email to my parents outlining our boundaries. We would consider rebuilding a relationship only if they acknowledged the harm they had caused, committed to treating Leo with respect, and agreed to family therapy sessions. I sent it before I could lose my nerve, then took Leo to the park to clear my head. While Leo was climbing the jungle gym, I received a text from a number I did not recognize. It was from Mr. Thomas, Leo's science teacher's husband, who ran the local robotics club. "Ms. Peterson mentioned your son's interest in robotics. We have an opening in our Saturday morning club if he would like to join. No pressure, but the kids are working on some cool projects he might enjoy." That afternoon, I took Leo to meet Mr. Thomas and see the robotics club in action. The transformation in my son was immediate and beautiful to witness. Here, surrounded by other children who shared his interests, Leo's entire demeanor changed. His shoulders relaxed, his smile came easily, and his eyes lit up as he examined the projects other kids were working on. He asked, practically bouncing with excitement, "Can I join, Mom, please?" I replied, feeling a weight lift from my heart, "Absolutely. This looks perfect for you." December arrived with no response from my parents to my email, but an avalanche of texts and calls from Sarah. I finally agreed to meet her for coffee, steeling myself for the confrontation I knew was coming. The upscale cafe Sarah chose was typical of her, trendy, expensive, and designed to impress. She was already seated when I arrived, her designer handbag placed prominently on the table. She sighed as I sat down. "Finally. I was beginning to think you had gone completely off the grid." I replied evenly, "Just taking some space to think." She said, stirring her latte, "Well, you have certainly thrown the family into chaos. Mom barely leaves her room, and Dad is on a rampage. Christmas is going to be a disaster." I said sincerely, "I am sorry they are struggling." But I had to make a choice between keeping the peace and protecting my son. Sarah asked, her perfectly manicured eyebrows rising, "Do not you think you are being a little dramatic? It was just some harmless teasing. Leo needs to develop a thicker skin. Would you say the same if it were Emily or Daniel being mocked by the family?" Sarah's expression faltered momentarily. "That is different." "Why?" Because they fit into the mold of what mom and dad think children should be. Because they do not challenge anyone's comfort zone. Because they understand how to behave in family settings. Sarah insisted. They know their place. The phrase struck me like a physical blow. Their place. Do you hear yourself, Sarah? Children are not supposed to know their place. They are supposed to be loved and encouraged to become themselves. Sarah scoffed. Oh, spare me the modern parenting lecture. Some of us still believe in traditional values and respect for elders. I countered, respect should go both ways. And love should not be conditional on a child conforming to some arbitrary standard. Our conversation continued in circles, neither of us truly hearing the other. But as I drove home, I realized something important had shifted inside me. For the first time, I did not leave an encounter with Sarah feeling diminished or defensive. I felt secure in my convictions and choices. 2 weeks before Christmas, holiday cards began arriving. Among them was a thick envelope from my parents. Inside was a standard card with a family photo from last year's holiday gathering and a check for $500 with "For Leo Christmas" written in the memo line. No note, no acknowledgement of our rift. Just money, as if a check could bridge the chasm that had opened between us. I returned it the next day with a brief note. Thank you, but we are not looking for financial support. What Leo needs is acceptance and respect. That evening, Leo came home from school bursting with news. Mom, my team qualified for the regional robotics competition in January. Mr. Thomas says our design is really innovative. His excitement was contagious. We celebrated with pizza and ice cream. And as I watched him chattering animatedly about circuit boards and programming languages, I knew without doubt that protecting this spirit, this authentic, passionate, brilliant spirit, was worth any family fallout. Christmas approached, and for the first time in my life, I would not be spending it at my parents' house. The realization brought both sadness and liberation. Leo and I decided to create our own traditions. We bought a small tree and decorated it with homemade ornaments, planned a special Christmas Eve dinner, and arranged to volunteer at the local animal shelter on Christmas morning. Leo declared as he hung a robot ornament he had crafted from spare parts on our tree, "This is going to be the best Christmas ever." Looking at his hopeful face, I silently vowed to make it so. 2 days before Christmas, an unexpected call came from my mother. I answered with trepidation. She said, her voice lacking its usual confidence, "Clara, I am calling because, well, your father had a minor heart episode yesterday." My breath caught. Is he okay? Yes, just a scare. The doctor says it was stress-related. The accusation was implied but not stated. He is supposed to rest and avoid upset. I waited, sensing there was more to this call than health updates. She finally said, "We would still like you and Leo to come for Christmas. It would mean a lot to your father given the circumstances." The old guilt began to creep in, but I remembered Dr. Carter's words about emotional manipulation. I said carefully, "I am genuinely sorry about Dad's health scare. But our boundaries have not changed. Has Dad read my email? Is he willing to acknowledge how his behavior affected Leo?" My mother's sigh was heavy with disappointment. "Clara, your father is not well." Is this really the time for ultimatums? It is not an ultimatum, Mom. It is a boundary. There is a difference. She said, her voice hardening. "Well, your boundary might cost you a relationship with your father. Is that what you want?" The question hung in the air between us. Was it what I wanted? Of course not. I wanted parents who could see and value my son for who he was. I wanted family gatherings free from tension and criticism. I wanted Leo to have loving grandparents in his life, but not at the cost of his self-worth, not at the expense of his spirit. I said slowly, what I want is for Dad to get well, and for both of you to consider whether having a relationship with your grandson is worth examining your own behavior. The choice is not mine alone to make. After hanging up, I sat in the quiet of our apartment, emotions swirling. The weight of family expectations and patterns was heavy. but for the first time, I felt strong enough to carry it without buckling. 3 months after the Thanksgiving incident, Leo stood nervously beside his science fair display at Oakwood Elementary. His robot, now significantly upgraded, sat proudly on the table, surrounded by charts explaining its design and function. The judges were making their way through the exhibits, clipboards in hand. I whispered, giving his shoulder a squeeze, "You have got this. No matter what happens, I am incredibly proud of you." Leo nodded, taking a deep breath. When the judges reached his table, he launched into his explanation with confidence I had not seen before the Thanksgiving confrontation. He answered their questions thoughtfully, demonstrating his robot's capabilities with steady hands. That afternoon, when they announced the winners, Leo's name was called for first place in the engineering category. The smile that broke across his face as he accepted his trophy was worth every difficult moment of the past months. He exclaimed as he ran back to me, trophy clutched tightly in his hands. "I did it, Mom." I replied, pulling him into a hug, "You sure did. You were amazing up there." As we packed up his project, I reflected on the journey we had taken since November. The path had not been easy, but the changes in Leo were remarkable. He stood taller, spoke more confidently, and most importantly, seemed comfortable in his own skin in a way he had not been before. Our relationship with my parents remained complicated. After my father's health scare, I had sent flowers and called regularly for updates, maintaining caring contact while still upholding our boundaries. It was a delicate balance, one I sometimes struggled to maintain. 2 weeks after the science fair, I received a surprising call from my mother. She began, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant, "Clara, your father and I have been doing some thinking. We would like to come see Leo's robot demonstration if the invitation is still open." Leo had mentioned wanting to show his grandparents his science fair project, but I had never actually extended an invitation. My mother's revisionist history was typical, but rather than point it out, I focused on the opportunity presented. I said I would need to check with Leo first. My mother said, "Of course." Another unexpected concession. "We understand." When I asked Leo that evening, his reaction surprised me. He said after considering it, "I would like them to come. But I do not want them to say mean things about my robot again." I promised I will make sure they understand that. The following Saturday, my parents arrived at our apartment. My father looked thinner than I remembered, his normally commanding presence somewhat diminished. My mother carried a gift bag. My father said formally, "Hello, Clara. Thank you for having us." The stiff greeting was a far cry from his usual confident declarations, but it was a start. Leo emerged from his room, robot in hand. He said cautiously, "Hi, Grandma." "Hi, Grandpa." My mother stepped forward, offering the gift bag. "Leo, we brought you something." Inside was a sophisticated robotics kit, the kind Leo had mentioned wanting months ago. He said, genuine appreciation in his voice, despite his lingering weariness, "Thank you." My father said, making an effort to sound interested, "Your mother tells us you won a science fair. We would like to see your project if that is all right." Leo glanced at me, and I nodded encouragingly. He set up his robot on the coffee table and began explaining its features and functions. I watched my parents closely, alert for any signs of dismissal or mockery. But something had shifted. They listened attentively, asked appropriate questions, and when Leo demonstrated the robot's capabilities, my father actually looked impressed. He said when Leo finished, "That is remarkable engineering for someone your age. You must have put a lot of work into this." Leo's face lit up at the genuine praise. "I did. Mr. Thomas from Robotics Club helped me with some of the programming, but I designed and built it myself." My mother added, "You should be proud. It is quite an accomplishment." The visit continued with cautious conversation, like people speaking different languages, trying to find common ground. Before they left, my father asked to speak with me privately in the kitchen, away from Leo and my mother. He cleared his throat uncomfortably. Clara, I want you to know that I have been seeing someone. A doctor. For emotional issues. The admission clearly cost him. After my heart episode, the cardiologist suggested it might help with stress. He says I have something called rigid thinking patterns. My father continued with a frown, and that my generation was taught to suppress emotions rather than express them. It is all rather new age for my taste, but he paused, looking uncharacteristically vulnerable. I do not want to lose my relationship with you and Leo. It was not an apology, but coming from my father, it was an extraordinary concession. I said carefully, that means a lot to hear, Dad. Would you be open to a family session sometime with Leo and me? He nodded stiffly, if that is what it takes. After my parents left, Leo asked, do you think they are really changing? I answered honestly, I think they are trying. And that is a start. But real change takes time and effort. Leo questioned, like programming a robot? I smiled at his apt analogy, exactly like that. And we do not have to rush anything. We can take it slow and see how it goes. Over the next month, we began the careful work of rebuilding family relationships on new terms. My mother called regularly with genuine questions about Leo's activities. My father attended his therapy sessions and even agreed to a family session with Dr. Carter, though he sat stiffly throughout and spoke little. Sarah remained distant, uncomfortable with the shifting family dynamics that challenged her worldview. But Uncle John became a more regular presence in our lives, taking Leo to robotics competitions and offering the kind of unconditional support that family should provide. In late April, Leo's robotics team qualified for the state competition. When I mentioned it during a phone call with my mother, she immediately said, we would like to attend if that is all right with Leo. The competition was held in a large convention center 2 hours away. Leo was a bundle of nerves and excitement as he prepared with his team. I scanned the audience, not really expecting my parents to show up despite their stated intention. But there they were, sitting awkwardly in the bleachers, my father consulting the program with a furrowed brow. When they spotted us, my mother waved tentatively. I told Leo, pointing them out, your parents came. He took a deep breath. Is it okay if I go say hi before we start? I assured him, of course. I watched as he walked over to my parents. My father, after a moment's hesitation, put his hand on Leo's shoulder. Not the crushing grip of dominance he had used in the past, but a gentle touch of support. My mother actually hugged him, something I rarely saw her do. Leo returned to his team. His team did not win the competition, placing third in their division. But as we gathered afterward, Leo surrounded by his teammates and my parents standing somewhat uncertainly to the side, I realized we had all won something more important. Leo said as we drove home that evening, my parents following in their car to join us for dinner, I have been thinking about what happened at Thanksgiving and everything since then. I asked, what have you been thinking? He said that it is okay to love someone but still not accept how they treat you. And that sometimes people can change if you give them a chance, but you do not have to let them hurt you while you are waiting. Tears pricked my eyes at his wisdom. That is exactly right, Leo. That is what setting boundaries is all about. He added, looking out at the passing landscape, and Mom, thanks for standing up for me that day. It helped me learn how to stand up for myself. In that moment, I understood the profound truth that had been revealed through our painful family journey. Standing up for our children does not just protect them in the moment. It teaches them to protect themselves for a lifetime. That night, the journey was not over. My parents still struggled with old habits. Sarah remained resistant to change, but we were moving forward on a foundation of mutual respect rather than fear and obligation. As parents, we often focus on teaching our children about the world. But sometimes the most important lessons come when they watch us navigate it ourselves, when they see us set boundaries, demand respect, and choose authentic relationships over comfortable patterns.